Good evening and welcome to the Dollar Dogs and Beer podcast. I'm your host, Andrew. Joining me tonight, we've got Joe, while Jason remains in the IL for another week dealing with the cough that does not want to go away. Jason, I feel you, buddy. I think it took a month before the cough from my pneumonia last year went completely away, so keep healing, bud. Joe, wow, what an end to the trade deadline today. That was, that was something. We'll be talking about that a lot tonight.
Yeah, it was special. I'll say that. My phone is very grateful for the break the rest of the night because I was on it a hell of a lot today.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the follow of Jeff Passons was a good one to do today.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think it was, it just never refreshes quite fast enough because you've got all these different guys now, and it's just, oh my goodness, the amount of rumors that were floating around was absolutely crazy, and I took it upon myself to be the one to keep us all in the loop. So
you did a great job, man.
I did great until I left work.
Yeah.
That last hour of activity was absolutely crazy. So
that was that was nonstop and continuous. And what the hell just happened here? I think is the general consensus, and pretty accurate at that one. So before we roll into it, what are you drinking tonight to calm yourself down after the end of that final flurry?
I am drinking a Canadian whiskey. It's the Wayne Gretzky Distillery.
Nice.
Where's my camera? There you go. So
it
doesn't show up super great, but it's got
Wayne
Gretzky 99.
Nice.
It's a maple cask, so if you like, syrup and pancakes and waffles, you're gonna get some of that smell when you drink it, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's a nice little blend, and we'll see how it tastes. We'll see how it goes down the rest of the night.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing about Canadian whiskey that you can never doubt is that it's always going to be a touch on the sweeter side compared to American whiskey, American rye, Scottish whiskey, Irish whiskey. It's always a touch on the sweeter side, but it's not so sweet that you're like, oh, good God, I'm drinking straight sugar, like you are with a fruity drink in the Caribbean on the deck of a cruise ship, which I've also done. So for me tonight, I still have two more of the Gunner's Drought from last week. So we're going to roll with that again because it's freaking delicious. And I can't believe I didn't drink all of it. So it's going down tonight after this freaking trade deadline. So the smoke is settled. The chips are down. We now know the final rosters for everybody. Joe, since you were the one keeping the closest track on things today, before we get into specifics, what are some general thoughts you had?
General observations, I think, is that you were expecting. It seemed like there was more quantity of prospects going back versus the quality of it. I think you saw that across the board, especially with some of the other ones that we'll certainly get into. You saw a ton of that. You saw a lot of, certain teams were maybe they're selling, but they were also buying to prep for the next year or the next couple of years. I think a few teams really, maybe they didn't position themselves great for this year, but they positioned themselves for the next year and the years after. Mm-hmm. So you saw a lot of that. I think it's hard to not ignore the CBA kind of being in the background of this. I do think the expanded wild card kind of makes this a little funky too, because you have teams that are selling and buying instead of straight up buyers and sellers like we're used to. These additional wild cards the last few years have kind of made more people still alive, which kind of, lessens the amount of teams that are just willing to cut right away. You have teams like the Reds who we thought might get rid of a few extra, trade some other guys, and because it's like not officially done, it's kind of like, okay, well, I'll keep some of these guys that I probably wouldn't have kept otherwise. So the extended wild card and some of the decisions there. Um, it's really crazy too, the amount of false stuff that you see floating around. There was one account in particular today that was just like they were like, "Oh, DeGrom to the Braves is a done deal." It was not a done deal.
I really
um,
wish it would have been a done deal. God damn it!
there were a lot of other trades that you're seeing were done deals that actually didn't happen. There was one joke trade was a Skeens trade, which obviously wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, no way
You
in
know,
hell.
but there were a ton of those, so you almost have to know who to follow. I think Passon's a good one, Rosenthal's a good one. You know, Morosi's pretty solid. Um, Rosenthal and Passon are the ones that you're going to get a crap ton of information off of. Feisen's another one. Mark Feisen's a real good follow on that stuff. Um, whereas I think with John Heyman too, you're just getting bullet points. You're not getting like a full breakdown of stuff. I think following the I forget the handle, but it's one of the where they do the value of it and they measure the value and see if it's an overpay or an underpay.
Yeah,
That I think it's baseball trade values. I think is what it is, and so they're a nice follow to kind of see. Okay, did my team overspend based on the supposed value of these guys and that kind of thing? There were a ton of there were a few underpays, there were a ton of overpays, and there were a ton that was like, okay, it's accepted. Like they did, I think 86 trades, and 76 of them were accepted by their model based on being within a reasonable range, dollar wise, and that kind of thing. So um, you had a lot of guys who were making economic moves, I think, as opposed to crazy overpayments. So those were the big observations, I think.
yeah,
Um, the amount of movement too was another thing where it just seemed like there was a ton of movement before lunchtime, and you're just like, okay, there's still all these guys still out there. How many more trades are going to happen? And I think there were at least 10 to 12 trades between 5 and 6 o'clock.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, that last hour is typically pretty furious anyway, but yeah, it was an interesting day, shall we
yeah,
say? Um, yeah, as I have in my bar below my name, thanks for the lockout, LA. Yeah, I feel like if it wasn't certain before, the Dodgers getting Scooble probably pretty much guaranteed it at this point. Um, we'll break down some of the team by teams in a few minutes, but but the annoying thing about the Scooble trade, besides the fact that he went to LA, is how much it held up the entire market. And then it was almost too late for the dam to really break to see a lot of action after it. Um, you know what I mean? Because we were expecting like Scooble and then just a flurry of stuff. And I mean, there were a lot of trades today, but there wasn't, outside of Scooble, you didn't really have a ton of high value guys go outside of like Adley Rushman, Mize laid on to the Padres. You didn't see a ton of the bigger names that we thought might be moving. A lot of them really didn't go, which I was kind of surprised about. Again, as you alluded to, Joe, CBA coming up may have had a very, very large role in that happening.
well, and I think too with some of this, I mean, the Scooble deal happens on Saturday, so you literally have a day and a half, almost 2 days of trades to happen. And I mean, for Reed Detmers, for example, not to be moved makes no sense. More on that later, but like to see some guys like that not go, um, it was almost like perplexing because you really had 2 days once the big name was off the board to really have a ton of those marquee names move, and they didn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of bizarre. Um, you know, The biggest issue I'll say with the Scooble trade is not the fact that he went to the Dodgers for me. It's the fact that I don't know how you know, other teams couldn't have made the same deal. That's the part I don't get.
Yeah. I'm going to be really curious to see over the next, day 2 3 days when we start seeing what other packages were being offered to Detroit to know if the Dodgers really did make them the best offer or if they possibly had better offers from other teams. Maybe it just wasn't the type or caliber of player they want. We don't know. Obviously, we are not the general managers of the Tigers, but it's there's definitely a lot of questions that haven't been answered yet.
Yeah, and I think the last general observation I would make is that I think with him and maybe with a bunch of other ones, it's how much are you willing to get rid of for a 6 to 8 week rental, basically,
Yeah,
assuming you don't make the playoffs. If you make the playoffs, maybe it's a 3 month rental. Um, you know, how much were you willing to part with? Was there concern maybe that some of these guys were going to want to try to sign extensions before the end of the year, and that might have led to some hesitancy because it's like, well, I don't want to trade for him because I can't guarantee we'll keep him. Whereas I could easily see, and I think a lot of people will feel this way, but you could easily see Scooble signing an extension before the end of the season and then having that grandfathered in before the new CBA hits.
yeah, yeah.
So there might have been some of that concern too.
That's the looming CBA is definitely going to be. Yeah, that's definitely a cause for some of this. And I'm really, if Scooble does extend before the end of the year, I I have my doubts. I think Boris is going to take his chances because that's what he does. But if Scooble says no, I don't want to do that, and they do the extension before the end of the year, ooh boy, it's if they go to a cap system, which I still don't think that's going to happen. I think the players will fight that tooth and nail. But if it goes to a capped system and the Dodgers end up being a mile and a half over the cap, I am very curious to see how they will handle it. If it'll be grandfathered, if it'll be you have to get under tough shit, we'll have to see.
I don't see how they can do anything but grandfather it, truthfully. And
Well,
so
I mean, we've seen it before. Remember when the National Hockey League went from the soft cap to the hard cap after the long lockout at the end of the '90s, and told the Colorado Avalanche, "Suck it up, Buttercup, break it down."
right, I'm
But
not saying it.
I don't think MLB has the balls to say that to the Dodgers.
Well, first off, I just don't see it happening. It's just not the same league. It's not the same number of players. It's not the same dollar amounts that we're talking about. So it's just a hard to compare those two. I think because so much of the MLB contract is guaranteed money,
Mm-hmm.
it's putting a hard cap in place and having it be retroactive is just not practical.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's going to be a mess getting that figured out.
Yeah.
Again, I'm still not in favor of a hard cap system. We need a floor before we need a cap, but the way things are going, I don't know if the players are going to be able to stay united on that front. But we'll get into more of that later down as we get more information.
Well, one last thing. I think if
Yeah.
anybody is, all the guys that were traded as rentals, like it's in your best interest to sign an extension before the end of the year because you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I mean, at that point, it's about providing for yourself and providing for your family, regardless of how much we think they should make.
Yeah.
I would really be, I think it would be smart for anybody who is at the end of their deal to sign some sort of extension wherever they are.
You're not wrong. And I'm very curious to see how many we see by the end of the year because that's very strong possibility that could happen. One other thing I will say, I still think we have 2 wild card teams too many. Go back to 4. It won't ever happen. MLB is too greedy to go back. I hate the 16 playoff. I've hated it since it went to 6. Um, even I could even be convinced to go back to 5 and giving the number one a buy out of the wild card. But I hate this 16 wild card, and I swear to God, if they had more wild cards and further dilute down the pool even more, it's not going to be fun. All right, so let's take a look at the division leaders. We'll start the American League with the Rays. We always joke in the group chat every time we see a trade with the Rays. We're like, you're taking your chances there, buddy, because we've seen the Rays win so many trades over the years. I like what the Rays were doing. I think they did a good job cementing themselves at the top of the American League. Yes, the Red Sox made a lot of deals. They made a lot of strong moves, especially Rutschman. But starting 5 games up on Boston going into games today is definitely a help and a point in the favor of the Rays, I think. I really like picking up Liam Hicks from the Marlins. I like the Peralta move. They didn't really, giving up Smith, Petra, and Gary Gill Hill. I mean, yeah, prospects, but they didn't give up. They didn't give up their top prospect. I don't even think any of them were top 5 prospects. So, I think the Rays did as they often do. They played the deadline well. They always play trades well. It's just what they do as an organization. So I think the Rays are very well set up to make a push in October.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the Hicks move is a huge deal, like you said. I think Sawinski is a good bench bat and a fourth outfielder should they need it. A depth move for them. He used to play in Pittsburgh, so I've seen him a little bit. I think having both Wells and Peralta pitching wise, Peralta, I mean, coming from Milwaukee where he had a ton of success and then he went to a big market and didn't have success. There's a chance that going back to a small market where the pressure is a little bit lighter makes a difference for him. And I think it's hard to argue with both the Cubs and the Rays kind of have really good pitching architecture where they're able to get guys to fine tune and focus on whatever they do well.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that as a huge upgrade for them.
All right, and then the White Sox were happily active. It is really good to see the White Sox playing well again. Getting Castillo from the Mariners for what they did, Sir Anthony Dominguez, Nolan Jones, and Boston Smith. And I understand Castillo is not what he was when the Mariners acquired him. But I still think he is a great pickup for the White Sox. He gives them a strong veteran arm with playoff experience for that staff. Because that's the youngest staff I think they're the youngest team in the majors, not just pitching staff. So adding a veteran presence there for the playoff run can only help. I like what they did, Joe.
Yeah, there's really not a lot to be disappointed with here. Obviously Castillo, but Uriquity was the other day. They picked him up. That's another solid starter, reliever, long guy that can make a difference for them. Brazaban from the Mets is another good pickup, I think. He's maybe not done so great in New York, but again, part of it is the team around him not doing well. So I think the pitching pickups are a huge deal. I think getting Joey Bart, because they've had some injury issues on the catching front, is a good thing.
Yeah, poor Joey Bart, who spent all of 3 days in Atlanta.
I'm sure he was really glad to leave. Not gonna lie.
Well, Murphy's coming back. He was going to be dumped down to third catcher anyway.
Yeah, and I mean I think Brenton Doyle is a sneaky good addition for them in the outfield too. That was another trade that the White Sox made. I think that's a sneaky good addition for them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. We got Bart. I forgot. Bart was the trade from like 3 weeks ago. So he played 20
Yeah,
games in Atlanta. Slashed
yeah.
a terrific 188, 316, 375. Hey, I'm glad we got more than a couple cases of beer for him.
So he might have had his worst 3 weeks of his career in Atlanta.
Yeah. Don't let the door
Just
hit you on the
kidding.
way out, buddy.
Just kidding.
All right. Looking at the West. Oh my God. When did the Astros get back on top? I hate that. Okay.
This past week or so, yeah.
I know. I know. It was a sarcastic question. The Astros really, they really weren't doing. They were kind of doing that buy and sell. Picking up Dalton Varsho today from the Blue Jays, I did like that. Varsho's a good bat for them. They sent McCullers off to the Brewers. They sent Colton Gordon off for Jaden Fielder. Yeah, the Astros, they really felt like, as you had mentioned earlier, trying to do the buy and sell. We're not really sure if we have enough to do anything, but we also aren't sure we don't. So, the Astros are what they are. Varsho is a good move, though. I definitely like that for them.
Yeah, the only thing that struck me weird of the Varsho deal, and this kind of goes into something I'll talk about when we get to Toronto, but Spencer Arrighetti is under control until 29, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And to only have to get rid of one guy to get him is pretty. To only get one guy in replacement of him is pretty wild to me. Just from a value standpoint, it just seemed a little strange.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure. We'll have to see how good Arrighetti actually is.
Yeah.
But that might, I really am actually surprised they gave up that much control for only one guy. That is surprising.
I do think what's really nice about Varsho for them is that it basically gives Houston the ability to not have to worry about Jordan playing in the outfield anywhere. And Jordan can just permanently DH and not just.
Yeah, and hopefully stay healthy. Yeah.
Let your best hitter focus on hitting. What a concept.
Yeah, and he's doing it really well. I mean, he's got a legit shot at the Triple Crown right now. Last time I checked. Let me double check that to make sure I'm not going nuts. But the last time I looked, he was definitely within shooting distance of it. Here we go. American League. Yeah, he still's got the home runs by 4. He still's got the average by 32 points over Yandy Diaz. Wow. And yeah, RBIs, he's up 9 over Ben Rice. Yeah, I mean he's leading the Triple Crown now, and I would say, given those numbers, he's got a legit shot to hold it. So, pending a September swoon, which doesn't seem likely for Jordan the way he's hitting this year. So, hey, maybe the Astros will go. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, moving it over to the National League. Actually, before we jump into the National League, there were 2 American League teams that I wanted to focus on, and we'll just do them together since they're in the same division and made a massive trade with each other. The Red Sox and the Orioles. The big move being sending Adley Rutschman to Boston with Jake Rogers to get back Anthony Evanson, Carlos Narvaez, Andy Asakar, and Keeston Witherspoons, plus another player to be named later. It's crazy to think that Adley was even made available. It's crazy. They just won 100 games, 2 years ago, and they're already dumping a first round pick who had been a keystone of that team. That crazy how quickly things turn.
Yeah, it's not something you ever see happen. I think, being a 3-time All-Star, getting rid of both of the catchers that you have on your major league roster,
I feel bad.
It's pretty wild to me. The return was impressive. I thought maybe, from what I saw online, a lot of the reporters were pretty high on Anthony Ianson. Mm-hmm. They were really impressed with him coming on the other side of that. But I mean, you have Adley basically for a year and 2 months at this point, and see what happens, and go from there. Um, so if we play baseball next year and the Red Sox have a great, you know, 8 months with him, then it's a worthwhile trade. If they only play 2 months and then we don't have a season next year, then it's a little bit harder to swallow, I think.
So remember, the Orioles do have Samuel Basallo already. He's ready to take over catching. So
Right.
it's so they still have him on hand. I will say this. Looking at the top 10 prospect list for the Red Sox after the draft, this is ESPN's list, not MLB's list. Ianson was ranked 2, Azekar was ranked 4, and Witherspoon was ranked 5. That is, that's a great return for a catcher. It really is. I just, it makes you wonder, especially with sending both catchers off. Did the Reds, how bad of a heavy overpay was it for the Red Sox with that many high-level prospects going over? I don't know.
Yeah, it seems to me as if, it's one of those things where I feel like the Red Sox went from screw this to okay, let's go for it in the matter of a month, and obviously win streaks will do that. But I mean, what I think I appreciate from them is that they're just like, you know what, we're going to go. We'll see what we can do and make it happen.
And if there's ever a time as a low to mid wild card to say, to hell with it, let's throw the chips in and see what happens in the American League, this is the year. Because the American League is wide open. Mm-hmm. And yes, the Rays are the best team, and I think the Rays are going to hold the AL East. The Red Sox now have the firepower to chase them and put pressure on them. It's not like the National League where the divisions aren't wrapped up yet. But the division, except for the West, but the divisions feel largely wrapped up. I mean, the Phillies have floundered coming out of the break. So even though they cut it close to Atlanta at the break, Atlanta's back up eight ahead of the Phillies. The Cubs definitely could push the Brewers. Of the two races, I think that's more likely than the Phillies making a serious push against Atlanta. But the races are close in the American League, unlike the National League. So, if there's the time to do it, now is the time to do it.
Yeah, and I will say this too with the Red Sox. Not only did they get a strong veteran presence at catcher when he comes back off the IL, because he is injured at the moment, which is even more wild to me. Some of these trades were made for guys who are currently injured and aren't playing, which was crazy.
You don't usually see that as much as we did this year.
So, I mean, to see a lot of those kind of moves happen was pretty strange. I do think that Adley obviously gives them a massive lift at the catcher position, master lift offensively. I think there's a chance that the Eli White trade to me for the Red Sox makes a little more sense the more I think about it, because I've been reading a bunch of folks in Boston who are like, Duran has just had a really bad year. Duran has had a really, really rough year this year. And so there was thought before they turned things around that he would definitely be traded. And so I think getting Eli White will give him a chance to not play some and maybe get out of whatever is going on with him.
All right, let's hop it over to the National League. We'll start in the East. Atlanta, I don't know if it's nobody wants to trade with Alex Anthopoulos after what he did to the league in 2021 or what, but I was largely underwhelmed by what Atlanta did. I like Lane Thomas, and I just found out earlier today Lane Thomas jacked a grand slam off Tariq Skubal earlier this year, so there's that at least. But a lot of these deals are incredibly underwhelming for guys that either suck or we don't know very much about them. Like Bailey Falter has been absolutely unplayable. He was already DFA'd once by the Royals this year before they traded him in the Thomas deal. Now, Atlanta didn't really give up anybody of note for Lane Thomas. Carter Holton and Lucas Braun were low-level prospects. Tyler Mahle, I'm not really impressed there. I mean, giving up Anthony Molina. Anthony Molina hasn't done jack. He's too wild, which is kind of what Tyler Mahle's been all year. I saw the Brent Suter deal, and first I was like, wait, didn't we finish paying off the awful deferrals we put onto that terrible deal for Bruce Suter like 10 years ago? And then I looked again and was like, oh, Brent Suter. And then I looked at further and I'm like, okay, he's barely pitched in the majors. Duncan Davitt has barely pitched in the majors. Tyler Uberstein has barely pitched in the majors. I just don't get it. Like, I'm glad we got something for Nacho Alvarez because Nacho, his bat's not bad, but he really has very limited defensive capabilities. So he's not, we didn't have a spot for him. So I'm glad we were able to get something for him. I feel like we could have gotten better for Eli White than Tyler Uberstein. Eli White's been a very strong and speedy fourth outfielder for Atlanta for quite some time as either a late game defensive swap or as a late game pinch runner. So I'm not really, especially with everybody, so many teams are looking for outfield bats. So I feel like they could have done better than that if they were going to dump Eli White off than for a guy who's pitched less than 5 innings in the majors.
Yeah, I'm a little perplexed, kind of like you on the Braves. Like Lane Thomas is definitely an upgrade.
Yeah,
the Mahle will at least ease the burden on the bullpen, to some extent. But this is one of those things where you and I have talked about this before, where it just felt like in the offseason, you're like, it feels like they miss on a pitcher or two in free agency. Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to make up for that at the deadline when you're, struggling mightily, even though, the rest of that division is not as good as it should be.
Why didn't we make, if we were willing to dump prospects for Skubal, which by all rumors, Atlanta had sent a very strong package to Detroit. I don't know what I'm sure it did not include Caminetti, but Atlanta was willing to send decent prospects. So why weren't they willing to send off for Mize or one of the other better start? Like all they did was get 3, 4, 5 guys or bullpen,
right?
Which they did need more bullpen. I'm not saying they didn't need bullpen, but they also didn't go after a higher level bullpen arm either. And now maybe some of these young guys will develop to that, but we don't know. Like most of these guys, like I said, have under 10 innings pitched in the majors, which, okay, great. So we've got long-term contract control. This is not really the time I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I do think that there were way too many, marquee level starters or whatever you want to say, or high leverage bullpen arms that didn't go this trade deadline. I mean, for Reed Detmers to still be in Anaheim at this moment is criminal at this point. For some of these other guys, you're just like, really? This guy didn't get traded? Why? How did a team not put up the package for it? Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. I do think, and one of the things that I heard a lot today, and I was thinking about it just now, is so many times you hear about prospects this and prospects that, and it's like, well, yeah, that's all they are is prospects. So if you have a chance to win now, who the heck cares?
And that's why I said last week I didn't mind giving up some of those top prospects to bring a player of Skubal's caliber in, because a playoff rotation of Scooble 1, Sale 2, like that's going to terrify the ever loving hell out of a lot of teams.
Right.
Whereas right now, let me see what they have. Let me see who they have listed for the depth chart after the trade deadline. Strider might be back in September, so he's out. Right now, your number 2 guy is Bryce Elder.
Yeah, that's not a recipe for success. That's for damn sure.
No, and Martin Perez is your 3. Molly is now the 4. Bumps Holmes down to 5, which I'm fine with that. Holmes is serviceable on the back end. Reynaldo Lopez bounces between the rotation and the long relief guy. Wentz is still injured. Schwellenbach is still injured, although I think both Wentz and Schwellenbach have started to throw, so they could be imminent. So, like, I understand that there's the prospect that we have those guys getting ready to come back soonish. Wentz tore his ACL in March. He's not coming back this year. He was the collision at first base. Schwelly should be getting ready to come back soonish. Yeah, he started throwing bullpens at the end of July. So, I mean, Schwellenbach should hopefully be back, towards the end of August, beginning of September, and that's great if we get Schwellenbach from last year back. There's no guarantee that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think what's hard, I think, with the Braves is that you spent up until about 3 weeks before the deadline, 3 weeks before the All-Star break, you spent the majority of the season dominating your division, and you're still 8 games up at this point. So it kind of feels like you're almost in the driver's seat, and unfortunately that complacency might be a downside.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I don't like it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move it into the Central. The Brewers, who were even more rumored to be closing in on Scooble than we were, really didn't end up doing, nearly as much as we thought they would. I mean, they got Braden Shoemake from the Astros for cash. They got McCullers. They got Gordon from the Astros. I did like the Bo Naylor deal. Cody Hewer was in that deal as well. Later in the day, you had Dustin May and JoJo Romero from the Cardinals. I was a little surprised to see that interdivision trade there. And then Senzatella from the Rockies. I did like that one. But it kind of felt like for Milwaukee, once once Scuba went to the Dodgers, kind of felt like Milwaukee really, kind of similar to Atlanta, didn't really know what they were. It's like they got punched in the face and they didn't know how to work around it.
Yeah, I was a little like at some point, right? You have to, winning the division, I think at least 7 of the last 8 years, like Milwaukee has done. I think it might be all 8, but winning the division as often as they do outside of the 2020 year with COVID when the Cubs won it, at some point you have to decide if you want a championship more than you want to be good for the next 10 years, right? And to make a Cubs parallel for a second, like if the Cubs don't go after Aroldis Chapman in 2016, they don't win a World Series, period.
Yeah, agreed.
Like at some point, these guys are too worried about being good for 10, 15 years than about winning a championship. And at the end of the day, that's the goal. To quote Moneyball, if you don't win the last game of the season, nobody gives a shit. So,
yeah.
I mean, and you live that. You guys had 14 division titles and had 1 World Series to show for it. Like,
I mean, in 21, if we didn't grab Soler and we didn't grab,
Jock.
Jock Peterson and the other left-handed outfield, we didn't make those moves. We didn't win that World Series. Soler was the freaking MVP, for God's sakes. Eddie Rosario. That's who my brain was farting on. Because Rosario was the ALCS MVP, and Soler was the World Series MVP and hit one of the biggest moonshots that's ever been blasted out of Astros Stadium, which I pretty sure it's still in orbit around the moon at this point.
It might be. I will say this: all of that to say about the Brewers. I do think that Dustin May is an upgrade for them pitching wise. I do
Yeah,
think that Senzatella will provide some strong relief for them.
I like.
Um,
I think that was my favorite deal that they made with Senzatella.
yeah, I'm not like Hewer was another guy that they had him for a day and then they got rid of him. But McCullers is one of those where if you get vintage Lance McCullers, then you're in really, really good shape. But there's just no guarantee of that at this point. So I do like Dustin May. I do like Sensatella, but the rest of what they did, and Naylor is a stronger catcher than they're getting out of Gary Sanchez right now. So I mean, those three moves are impactful. I just don't know if it's enough. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got a lot of questions. I've got a lot of questions from this trade deadline, and I don't have a lot of answers yet. It's just one of those. Where is McCall? Oh, that didn't even hit this list yet. Okay. I was just curious. I was just peeking out to see if that particular trade had been graded by some of the, talking heads of the national stage that pay more attention to that stuff than we do. Because I don't know when McCullers is even expected to be back. I was curious. All right, and then let's talk about the stupid white whale. They only made one trade worth mentioning, and honestly, it was I hate to say it, a damn good trade. They got Tariq Skubal from the Tigers for Zaire Hope, River Ryan, and Brady Smith. Now, initially, all three of us were extremely underwhelmed by those moves. Like, as underwhelmed as we could have ever possibly been. And then we did I did dive a little bit deeper to see what the return was, what they looked like. Let me see here. Where did I put that one? Okay, so that's the Dodgers 5, 7, and 17. So 2 top 10 guys back. And then Hope is number 25 in MLB Top 100. That's MLB.com's Top 100. And Ryan is number 68. So it wasn't like initially I was like the Dodgers completely scalped the Tigers. What the hell were they thinking? The Tigers did get good value back. I think Skubal, even on a rental, is valuable enough that they should have gotten quite a bit more than that back. And I really can't wait to see what other deals were being offered for Skubal, because I can't believe that was it. That was the best you could do was three top 30s, 2 of them being MLB top 1. I can't believe that was the best you could get for the guy who's won back-to-back Cy Youngs in the American League and was without a doubt the best pitcher made available at the deadline.
Yeah, I have a hard time with this one because to me, like, I know the Dodgers are the great, the one we can hold up and say this is all your fault and this and that and the other thing. If this is all the package it takes, I don't understand how nobody else got him. I just don't get it. I don't know if the Tigers were like, let's just get the ball rolling, because I mean, when you look at the Tigers, they are literally only 2.5 back in a wide open American League. Like, if you're going to make this trade at all, then you have to get something pretty meaningful back. If I'm Detroit, I just don't quite understand that. And part of this is with the 6 wild cards now, or the 6 teams now, the 3 wild cards total. I hope Manfred didn't hear that idea because that was a bad idea.
Good God. I can't. If there's more wild card added after this CBA, I'm going to start throwing things.
Yeah, to me, like I don't have the visceral reaction about the Dodgers that most everybody else does. I'm just like, well, you guys either spend the capital or don't. Like, if this is all it takes to get the reigning back-to-back Cy Young Award winner, like I've got bigger questions about why teams couldn't make this work. I just don't get it. Obviously it makes them significantly better, but Bubik from the Royals is still on the IL, I think. The catcher Rotvert or whatever, however you say his name, Wortvet, I guess maybe. It has been on the Dodgers now, I think 2 or 3 times in the last 2-3 years. Like he's been back and forth. So to me, Bubik, if he can pitch anywhere near his pre-injury levels, it's a net upgrade. But I mean, obviously, when you have the lead in the division that you do, you really don't have to make a whole lot of moves.
Yeah. So I just pulled up from SI, which, yeah, I know it's SI, but some other hypothetical deals that the other teams could have presented to Detroit for Skubal that would have exceeded what the Dodgers gave up. Now, this doesn't mean the teams were willing to make these deals. But for the Rays, they had Brody Hopkins, Caden Bonine, Brendan Summerhill, which would have been Hopkins is Tampa's 5, Bonine's Tampa's 3 and number 90 in MLB's top 100. Summerhill is Rays 23. The Phillies could have potentially offered up the likes of Gage Wood, Justin Crawford, Ramon Marquez, Moises Chase on the back end. Wood probably wouldn't have been put up there because he's their number 1, but wouldn't have been you have to put something big up to start the talk. Crawford really has not started great in his MLB career, but who knows? I think it's too soon to say he's a bust. Bolin has been solid this year. He would have been an MLB ready guy that they could have used, but for the Brewers, they were looking at possibly like Luis Pena, Logan Henderson, Bishop Letson, because the Brewers would not have put Jesus Medea in any deal for anybody. He's too close to being ready. And that would have been I think that would have been a better package of Pena, Henderson, and Letson. Personally,
yeah, and I caution the whole. Well, they weren't going to include this guy because he's too close to being ready. Like last year, the Cubs, I think, could have made a deal for Cabrera and didn't because the Marlins wanted Casey and somebody else, and they ended up getting rid of Casey anyway to get Cabrera in the offseason. Like, yeah. I don't understand the difference.
Why
there.
do it then? Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a good enough deal in the offseason, then you should have done it when you had a chance to win.
Well, in the case of Medea, he's either going to be called up in September when rosters expand, or he's likely going to earn an opening day spot next year.
And I totally get that from that logic standpoint. But say Medea falls off the face of the earth in the next month and they don't call him up.
Yeah.
Then you didn't get rid of a guy to get a secondary ace to your staff for what reason? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. Oh, I completely agreed.
I heard Buck Showalter say this today. He's like, prospects become suspects. So they're either, going to be just prospects or they're going to turn into the guys that you're going to trade for, or, it's just kind of the notion that these prospect rankings, I think sometimes it's like we get a little too hung up on this when, yes, you want some value back, but at the same time, like you either want to win a championship or you don't.
A deal that they had hypothesized for the Cubs: outfielder Josiah Hartshorn, outfielder Kane Kepley, right-hander Brooks Capel, and shortstop James Martinez.
Yeah, I knew that they were not going to get rid of Hartshorn. They probably should have. He's been on fire for the last month and a half.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing too, where for me it's like strike while it's hot. If they're playing, if they have a hot bat and they're in Iowa, then they should be up.
Yeah.
Or wherever they are. I think Hartshorn was in single A or double A, but still. I mean, if they're hot, either move them while they have value, or promote them while they have value and see what happens.
And like what they said for us was Cam Caminiti, John Gill, the shortstop, and then lefty Briggs McKenzie. I mean, yeah, it's a lot to give up, but honestly, if it was only those three guys, I would have made that deal.
I mean,
even though Cam Caminiti's our number one, I would have made the deal.
Well, and here's where my pushback with the Braves would be if they weren't going to part with Caminiti is you have a core that is locked in.
Right.
Like this is your win. This is your window. So if this is your window, do what it takes to win during the window.
Yep.
Like I'm just not really.
I can't move Austin Riley no matter how much nobody's going to take Riley right now. He's got no value. The only infield position that isn't locked up long term is shortstop right now. And they just brought up where is he? Jim Jarvis, who's been playing well since they brought him up. So although I love John Gill because of his ridiculous speed, if there's value and you have the depth to do it, which we definitely have the pitching depth to get rid, because Caminiti and the other guy, they're both single A, double A level guys right now. So, yeah, it's strike while the iron's hot. I mean, I told you the rotation right now. It's sail and pray for about a week's worth of rain, and then sail again. We don't even have Spawn and Sane right now. We've got sail and sail. It really would have been nice to go Scooble sail and then pray for rain, and then Scooble sail, and then another 3 days of rain.
There you go.
All right. Two other teams to talk about in the NL. First, the Phillies. Jason's livid. Jason wants Dave Dombrowski bounced out of his office with his computer thrown behind him and pretty much Dombrowski's entire staff, because once again, the Phillies made one good move. They did get Luis Arias from the Giants for Ramon Marquez and Marty Guerre. I like the move. Here's the problem. Where does Luis Arias play, Joe?
Well, first or second, but usually second.
Well, no, he usually plays. Well, yeah, first or second, or DH ideally. Right. Well, the Phillies have a DH they can't move. Schwarber should be nowhere near the outfield. This has been tried many times, and the blooper reel from a couple years ago before the Phillies permanently moved him to DH was hilarious and also a little bit sad. So you've got Trey Turner at shortstop, whose range is down. I mean, it's okay because of his speed, but he's never had a great range score because he doesn't anticipate well off the bat. That's been the case since he was with the Nationals when he came up. His defensive runs saved this year are at I pulled it up earlier. It was like -8. It was like -16 defensive runs saved, and he's made like 18 errors. Or I might have the two numbers crisscrossed. It doesn't matter.
I think it was -13 or -18 with 13 errors or something like that.
Yeah. His fielding percentage is 95%, which is not great for a shortstop. So instead of doing the logical thing, like either getting rid of Alec Boehm to make space for your new arrival, or moving Trey Turner into the outfield because let's face it, with his speed, he's fine for outfield. His arm's not great, I'll give you that, but he'd be fine in left field. But no, they're going to move Harper back to the outfield, and Harper has already said he's going back to first base after this season. The outfield's just going to be temporary, even though he was an outfielder for years. And they're going to play musical chairs, move Bohm over to first, move Stott to third instead of putting Stott at shortstop where he naturally is, and then putting Arise at second. Like, what the hell were the Phillies doing? They also needed more pitching. They really didn't do much to cover the pitching either.
I will say this. I think Rayleigh has been phenomenal lately for the Mets. I think he'll be a very welcome addition to the Philly bullpen.
That's true. They needed every bullpen pitcher that had a pulse.
I do think that Killian. I have not watched him or read his stats since he left the Cubs and went to the Giants, but because he was part of the deal with for KB when KB got traded originally, and so Killian is one of those guys where maybe in the bullpen he's having a much better success than he did trying to start when they first brought him up to the big leagues, and so. I do think that those two. I mean, Killian's fastball is pretty strong, pretty good. So I think those two guys, bullpen wise, are secure some things. I do think they should have gotten a starter. I don't know who that starter should have been. Whether to me, Scooble probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them.
Yeah.
But Robbie Ray definitely would have made sense. Casey Mize would have made sense. I'm looking for another name real quick in our list of trades. Peralta would have made sense. Like there's a lot of guys that would have made sense to be a net benefit to the Phillies. And, I'm a little surprised they didn't make, some of those moves. But I do think the bullpen help is sufficient. I think the Phillies getting a rise is going to really benefit the offense because the offense has been a power first and bat to ball second, and a rise drastically improves that overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, Arise has 22 strikeouts to this point in the year. Schwarber had 22 strikeouts in the last month. So
Schwarber probably had 22 strikeouts in the last 2 weeks.
It's probably closer to that. I did see a number. I forget what it is at the moment, but still, the numbers that you're talking about strikeout wise, it's definitely a net benefit to have someone of Arise's capability in there. I mean, you could have Arise. You could have Arise
8 times in the last 5 games.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a net improvement offensively. The defense stuff will sort itself out, I think. I really was surprised they didn't just see if Arise would play first, or even if Turner moved to third instead of to the outfield. To me, third and short is a easier transition than short to the outfield to me, just because it's on the same side of the diamond and you don't really have to worry about range with third base. It's more about the arm than anything else.
Well, and Turner doesn't have a great arm, which is probably why they didn't want to do that. I just Arise, they handcuffed themselves. The simplest thing would have been to just move Harper to the outfield and put Arise at first.
Yeah, I thought they might do that. And it sounds to me as if Arise wanted to play second, and that's where he wants to play. And I totally understand wanting to play somewhere. I much more appreciate the Harper approach of the team needs me to play here. Fine, I'll play there. I don't care. And truthfully, I do think Harper might have said it's a one-time thing, but Harper's one of those guys where, look, if Arise is locked in long term and he becomes the first baseman, Harper will play wherever you tell him to play.
Yeah, yeah. It's true. He's a very team first guy. Um, it all. This is. I just thought about this. This is almost as wild as back in. I forget if it was the 21 World Series run or if it was in 22, where we had so many late game changes that that the big panda actually was put back in the field at third base where he used to play. Like Riley was moved to left. Well, it was like one of those, you make all the pinch runs, the pinch hit moves to try and win it, and then oh shit, you didn't push that last run across. So you have the most unconventional defensive alignment that you could possibly imagine. Like that almost feels like it almost feels like the Phillies have kind of handcuffed themselves into doing that for the rest of the year. I like, does Alec Boehm have no value left to trade? Is that like, I know he's due to be a free agent at next year or at the end of this year. I know that's coming up.
I don't remember where
27.
When he is. He is one of those guys that I kind of wanted, like last year in the offseason before they got Bregman. Like I would have been okay with Bohm being traded to the Cubs. I would not have had a problem with that at all. So that kind of surprised me that they didn't.
Bohm has not been good this year. I understand that, and he's a net negative in any trade. But I don't know. I just don't, and I think Bohm at this point might be one of those guys that would do well in a swap with somebody else that's kind of struggling somewhere else, and let's see if a change of scenery helps both guys kind of trade.
Yeah.
I just, I don't know, man. It's got a lot of questions and not a whole lot of answers from Dombrowski. Well, it seems like he's content.
I will say this, another thing with the Phillies is I do think that you do have, Aiden Miller primarily plays short, but maybe he would be willing to play third and get called up and be able to play a serviceable third base, until such a time that someone else was more equipped to do that. If you don't play Arise at first, I mean, there's a whole lot to be decided, I think, with this. You're not going to really – I mean, tomorrow will be our first look at what the Phillies try to do with this new lineup. And I think by the end of the week we'll have a better sense of what they're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, if Bohm keeps playing this poorly, Harper might be right back at first base, and Bohm might just be riding the bench anyway. And this will be largely academic.
Right. Or we could end up with, Turner getting moved to third or getting moved to the outfield as a fourth, fifth outfielder instead of playing short. You just never know until they start playing together and figuring out what works and what doesn't. So,
yeah. All right. What do you think about the Cubs deadline?
I mean, it's hard not to be disappointed or hard not to be excited about what they've done. I do think when you look at the entirety of the acquisitions they've made in the last, I would say, month and a half or month, getting David Peterson, who's had one bad start since he came to the Cubs, is a definite upgrade. Cutting ties with Tyone was necessary.
Yeah.
Having Savali, who can be a long relief or just out of the bullpen, getting Gossman for two prospects is pretty awesome. I'm pretty stoked about that.
I did like the Gossman trade.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they made that trade, I think it was last night. To me, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You've made a move before Monday. I feel a little bit better about this, about what you might do. But it really wasn't until they did what was supposed to be, from reports, Reed Detmers, which didn't end up being Reed Detmers. that was like, holy cow, they're actually going to go for this. But getting Braxton Garrett, who's coming off of Tommy John from the Marlins, um, to me, he's got a lot of good metrics. He's got all of the pieces to be good. It's just whether he comes off the Tommy John recovery the way they expect him to, or to pitch to the way that he's able to. Seferian from the Angels is a huge pickup for them. He's got a really lively fastball from what I've seen so far. So that's a huge pickup for them with the injuries they've had in the bullpen. Getting Clay Holmes there in the last few hours from the Mets was a huge, huge pickup for them. Huge deal. Tyrone Taylor, another outfielder for them, with the way Seiya's been struggling off and on and not been as good in the outfield defensively. And with Happ's struggles in left field, I think getting a regular outfielder that's available and reliable was a great thing for them. I mean, to look at what they have now after today, you have a rotation of Boyd, Imanaga, Gossman, Holmes, and Cabrera. And you have guys like Ray and Assad, who you basically have 8 with Savali. You have 8 guys who could start right now. So what happens with Ray and Assad and some of that is yet to be seen. Cabrera is still on the IL. If it were up to me, I think that 5th spot would go to Ray until Cabrera can prove that he's got it. Because he's just not done that to this point, with all the injuries and time off. So you feel really good about the pitching, which was definitely a weakness going into today and definitely going into the last few days, which is pretty well documented on this show anyway. But to me, the biggest what if right now is, can the bats come alive like we know they can hit? Because for the better part of the year, outside of those 2 10-game winning streaks, they've not done that. They've not produced to the level as a collective that they should be able to produce at offensively. So, I mean, I might have preferred one other big bat, maybe Taylor Ward instead of Taylor, or maybe seeing Carson Kelly get traded and get another catcher somewhere, might have been beneficial. But overall, I mean, it's hard to be disappointed when you want them to go after it and act like they can get there. And to me, the Cubs acted like they can go there this year.
Mm-hmm. Just want to share something that Jason shared earlier today, not with us, but from the Fight and Phil's page. It says Dave Dombrowski said the Phillies talked to teams about starters, but he's comfortable with Nola and Painter as they compete for a playoff spot. Said Painter's last start in recent minor league production made a difference in his confidence. He also said the Phillies did not approach Trey Turner about moving off of shortstop. Yeah, I understand even more why Jason wants him to go. Turner's not serviceable at shortstop anymore, and great that you have confidence in Painter turning it around. I don't in the playoffs. He's never done it. Let's face it, the rock of that starting rotation for the playoffs isn't on that team anymore in Ranger Suarez. So yes, Wheeler, but I don't trust Nola as far as I can throw him, and I don't know how much you can trust Painter in the playoffs. So,
well, what I would say to maybe calm Jason's nerves and maybe Phillies Nation's nerves a little bit is, to me, realistically, the playoffs are a three guy rotation, and then everybody else just kind of fits in somewhere. So I could see them doing Wheeler, Sanchez, whichever order you want to go in, and Luzardo. And literally Nola and Painter are just out of the bullpen or openers, like an opener for the other, like a piggyback type of thing.
I mean,
And
if
that would at
I
least
wouldn't even
break
put
Painter
Nola.
in.
I wouldn't even put Nola on the wild card roster, honestly.
Fair enough. I'm not saying whether they should or not. I'm just bigger picture thinking that having those three kind of as your primary starters, and Nola could start or Painter could start if he has a really good next month or so. I would be surprised if they don't look to Painter as maybe out of the the bullpen a little bit or have an opener for him, to kind of get some of the early crap out of the way. It seems to me as if he and Nola both really struggle at the beginning of the game as opposed to once they settle in.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm wondering if maybe an opener might help them adjust a little bit differently to the game, the flow of it maybe. Um, but to me, the fact that they have Luzardo, Wheeler, and Sanchez, to me, I do agree with you that of the two that they could have signed, they should have signed Suarez and not Nola. I think pretty much everybody agrees with that.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there are ways to get them to, you know, max effort for an inning or two as opposed to hoping they'll go 5 or 6.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. More and more, I am not upset that Atlanta did not get Aaron Nola because he went back to the Phillies for more years, but a little less money. Not upset that we dodged that bullet in the slightest. All right, all right, Joe. American League, give me like 3 to 4 winners, 3 to 4 losers.
Yeah, I think I do think that the Red Sox are a winner here. Again, the Eli White move, the Adley move, um, are good moves for this year. I do think the collective of what the White Sox did was impressive for them. Um, I also do think that um, I think that the Guardians got better with Joe Adell in the outfield as a backup. Nathaniel Lowe, I think he plays first, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. But Nathaniel Lowe, Foster Griffin, I think they did enough to boost the young talent around them down the stretch. Um, so them, and I will say the last one in the American League for me, the last winner for me is probably Toronto. And what I want to say about Toronto is this: I think you you got a guy like Arrighetti who, assuming he's as good as they think he can be, you have control of him for 3 more years. So to have a starter that you have a ton of control over is a good thing. Jose Soriano from the Angels is a huge upgrade for them. Um, there's a chance that a change of scenery is a good thing for Jameson Tyone, and if that's the case, like you got Tyone for some cash.
Yeah.
Like those are huge upgrades from a pitching standpoint. So to me, I'm impressed with what they did on a pitching standpoint. Um, that's the winners I have for the AL. The losers for me are the Mariners because it just didn't really seem clear what they were trying to do. I feel like they could have. I mean, to leave the trade deadline and still have Kirby and Hancock on your roster when you got rid of some other pieces. Um, it's just hard for me to understand the direction there. Um, I that's one of those things where you're just kind of not really sure. The Twins to me are another one where you made big splashes with Minter and Kremer and then Hoffman today, but it's like you tried to toe the line between buying and selling, and to me it's like either be in or be out. Like this on the fence stuff just doesn't work. Um, so those are them and the Tigers for obvious reasons. Those are like the three losers for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, your winners. I think the Rays were winners. I think the Red Sox are winners. Um, I'm going to say the Orioles were both winners and losers. Um, just because of the image you're sending Adley Rutschman away. And I'm going to put the White Sox down as winners as well. Losers, I'm going to put, like I said, I have the Orioles winning and losing. Losing, I'm going to have the Tigers, obviously. Um, I'm going to say the Twins because I don't really have a better sense of what the hell they're doing coming out of the break as in. And I'm going to say also both the Rangers and the Mariners. Now, the Rangers handcuffed themselves because they gave so many players no trade clauses. So, like, they were trying to dump DeGrom, and DeGrom said, "Yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere. Tough luck." Um, I don't understand. Like, if the Mariners were willing to send away Luis Castillo, why in the hell didn't they dump Randy Arozarena as well? When so much of baseball was looking for a good power outfield right-handed bat, I don't understand why he is still on that roster right now unless they really do think that they're going to be able to close the gap. And they could. They're only 3 back of the division, 2 back of a wild card spot. They absolutely have a chance because the American League is wide open as hell. They're the only team in their division that has a positive run differential. Granted, it's only +3. But I don't know, man. I
Yeah,
just don't like the AL West in general right now. I think it's AL West is the old AL Central.
it really is bizarre to me. Again, back to what we talked about before, the whole 3 wild card scenario really waters down or dilutes the possibilities for some teams where they're like right on the line, and it's like, are you in or are you not? You're probably not. So, too many things have to go right for you and wrong for somebody else if you're outside of the 3 wildcard spots down the stretch.
Yeah. Yeah, there's too much wild card. Get rid of a bunch of the wild card teams.
Yeah.
Go back to 1 wild card, maybe 2.
I would be happy with the 1 wild card again and just be 4 versus 1, 2 versus 3.
Yeah,
DSCS World Series. It's really not that complicated.
I liked how exclusive MLB's playoff used to be. It used to mean something to win your damn division, and it barely does anymore. That's dumb as hell. All right, shuffling it to the National League side, Joe. 3 to 4 winners, 3 to 4 losers.
Um, I think it goes without saying. I think the Cubs were a winner.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to really argue with that. I think. I think. Overall, I do think that the Phillies are a winner. Generally speaking, I do think they'll find a way with some of the other pieces, like I've talked about. So, to me, they're a winner. The Padres are a winner. You go from having a ton of uncertainty to getting both Casey Mize and Robbie Ray in the same day. I'm sorry, that's just a win.
Yeah, I don't know if the team's worth giving up what they gave up for them. I don't know that they are, but I agree with your point.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think they improved, and I think the fourth one that I'll say is probably somewhat of a winner. Is probably the Pirates. To me, the sheer volume of players that they traded for, number one, which was nice to see. And getting Camilo Duvall, Luke Weaver, and Kirby Yates in the bullpen.
Yeah.
Those are huge adds for a team that has kind of like, we know they have great starting pitching most of the time. The bullpen has been the issue. And I would have loved to have seen them maybe get one other bat, but beyond that, I'm impressed with what they did from a pitching standpoint at the trade deadline. So those would be the winners to me. The losers, I think. Sorry, but it just feels like Atlanta just didn't do enough.
That's my number one loser too. You don't
right.
need to apologize.
but and I think part of the problem with Atlanta is you're trying to make decisions now when you should have made a few moves back in January,
Yep.
December, February,
Yep.
to prepare yourself for the injuries that you seem to have run rampant through your pitching staff for the last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So that's a problem for me. I think the Reds just not moving Hunter Green, um, Stevenson. That seems kind of odd to me because they just couldn't decide if they were in or out. The Rockies not moving Goodman not moving Goodman is just like I understand he's like the centerpiece, but like at the same time, we know you're not going to be competitive for 15 years. So
Yeah. Although I will say this, the Rockies moved more than they have the last couple deadlines. So I'm willing to give them a pass on not moving Goodman this year.
well, you've convinced me, so I'll take them off my list.
Because let's think of it, the Rockies transaction sheet's usually like two guys, and they actually were willing to trade assets away for the first time that I can remember to try and start continuing the efforts of restocking that minor league system that has just been so bad for so many years now. So, like, did they get a ton of top prospects in? No, but they didn't have the assets to send out to get top prospects. Even if you
Right.
can build the middle depth, that will help the top prospects play better.
Yeah, I would agree with that. To me, the Brewers just because it just feels like to leave Hunter Green, Detmers, Kirby, and Hancock on the table.
Yeah.
To not make a competitive enough deal for Scooble when you have the offense to win now.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's just really
And the pieces to
disappointing.
trade to get him.
Right, right. The pieces to get him, the talent at the major league level to win now, because I'm sorry, but winning division titles just isn't. That's not the end goal. It's just not.
Yeah.
So pretend that you care about winning because it would be nice if you did. Um, to me, that's the surprising one that doesn't make a ton of sense. Um, and I think the Mets are a loser just because there were a few more pieces that they could have given away to get some more capital back, and they didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I,
And
that
I
to me
thought,
shocked me a little bit.
and I thought the Mets actually under received a lot of their return too.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. And then the last thing I'll say National League wise is I just kind of feel that um, I I'm surprised the it's a twofold thing. I'm surprised the Nationals and the Cardinals dealt as much away as they did.
I've got an interesting thought on the Nationals. I feel like they're going for quantity over quality of return. And I don't, and that might not end up being the wrong call, but it's a curious one at this point.
Yeah, it's one of those things where with some of these teams, Miami, with Washington, with Milwaukee, if you're hot, then go for it. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. One sort of honorable mention loser, real quick. Sorry, for
That's
the
okay.
American League is to me the Angels because you
Yeah.
had Zach Nito that you didn't get rid of. You didn't get rid of Detmers, and you know Trout is a whole nother animal. Obviously, nobody was going to trade for him. I don't think, but
Plus, I'm pretty sure he has a full no trade clause too.
probably. But to me, it's just like as an organization, it's time to get serious. Now they made a ton of moves, which they're not normally accustomed to making. Um, but if you're going to go that far, then why not get rid of those two guys too? I just don't get it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. No, I've thought that for a while, to be honest. And I'm also wondering, is this finally going to be the Angels team that loses 100 games? Because somehow that franchise has never lost 100 games. There's 50 games left. So, where are they? At 69 losses. Nice. So they need to not lose 31 of their next 50 games to keep that run, to keep that ridiculous record alive. Will they do it? I don't know. This is a team that's badly underperforming their expected win-loss right now. So this could be the year it finally happens. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
All right. For me, winners, unfortunately, the Dodgers. Definitely the Cubbies. Definitely the Pirates. I like what you guys did. I love the bullpen additions for the Pirates. I actually thought Miami had a pretty good trade deadline as well. I was pleasantly surprised by what they did. I'm not really ready to say that I like what the Padres did because I don't know if it makes sense to do what they did. I know they're only one game out. I still don't know how much I trust them, but I mean, at least they were trying to do something. But that said, at some point, all these years of prospect dumping will come due on the Padres, and they're going to have a bunch of very lean years with players that are going to be hard to move. So, it's not now, but I think that could be coming up in the next couple of years. It would not shock me. The losers, as I said, Atlanta, straight up. I think I beat that dead horse to death earlier, but it bears repeating that Atlanta and Milwaukee had the two worst deadlines, I think, in the National League as far as the division leaders and wild card teams go. Cincinnati, I'm also putting on there. Again, they had so much they could and should be moving. This is a team that is not good. They've outplayed their record so far, and they've got a delightful negative 63 run differential. They're not going to get better this year. They should have been getting rid of pieces, and the fact that they didn't, I don't understand. I really don't. I think that's pretty much where I'm going to put it for my winners losers. You really nailed the analysis quite well for pretty much all of them, Joe. So you can copy paste me, other than a couple things that I just have a different perspective on it than you. You did quite well this time. All right. So that's that. When Jason gets back on, we'll finally talk about his experience at the All-Star Game Home Run Derby. Hopefully next week. Poor guy will finally be feeling better. Fun thing coming up, the Field of Dreams game is coming up shortly. Next week? Yeah, next week, Thursday, 13th.
Following next week, yeah.
Yeah. Yep, next week. So we'll give a little preview for that Monday night. It's going to be Phillies and the Twins out in Iowa, and that game is going to be broadcast on Netflix. So, I thought Netflix, I will briefly mention the Home Run Derby. I thought Netflix did a nice job with the Home Run Derby broadcast, other than the fact that they didn't bring in Boomer as a guest announcer to go back, 50 times, because I could listen to Boomer do that all day, forever. But, the Mike Tyson fight, not great. Really not great broadcast quality there, but the Home Run Derby was significantly better than the Tyson fight. So, Netflix is still really new to the sports broadcasting world. So, hopefully they've got a good panel of people on to do the color commentary for the Field of Dreams game. As we know, MLB doesn't usually screw up these one shots. So I am excited to talk about that next week, and then watch that game on the 13th. I'm so excited that it's back. I was really sad we didn't have it last year because of renovations to the field.
Yeah, I was I'm excited for that game. It's always a fun production on the one offs, like you said. Um, I am surprised with a game that has that much broad appeal. Having that on a streaming platform to me was a little bit of a choice, but
Yeah.
I do know that obviously that's the way things are moving. I'm not saying not to do it at all, but I was a little shocked by that nugget. Um, but it will be a fun experience, and I can say as a avid WWE fan, they've done a really good job. Netflix has with managing that part
Okay.
of their streaming platform. I mean, they have Monday Night Raw on every week on
I
Netflix.
forgot they have that on Netflix now. I completely
So
forgot that that's where that is.
so
Okay.
you have that. So you
They're
do have
getting
that. Yeah, they carry. It's roughly 2 hours and 40 minutes every Monday, and they've been handling that pretty well. They also Netflix also handles the like the big shows like SummerSlam, WrestleMania, stuff like that for the international audience. So they've done a really good job of handling that too.
okay.
Um, so
A little
there
better.
has been there is some success they've had with some of that. With some of those things. So you can feel a little bit better about the quality of the servers maintaining, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, as long as it's not crashing and rebuffering every 30 seconds like it did during the Tyson fight. Yeah, that can only be a success. All right, that's it for us this week, guys. Audio recordings are available on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, pretty much anywhere you can find them. We're live on YouTube as well as Facebook. Merchandise is at redbubble.com. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/dollardogsandbeer. We're presented by Dark Arrow Podcast LLC and sponsored by Baron Barbershop over in Manheim. Guys, may your dogs always cost $1. May your beer always be cold. We will see you next week.